DND number 9, Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, chapter 36. It's August 25th, Sunday morning, Redwood Hills Medical Center, Los Angeles, California. They had him drink some water. He accomplished it. They had him eat some Jell-O. He accomplished it. Then they told him he had to eat something, and he'd refused. It wasn't because he was trying to be difficult. He simply didn't feel like eating. He couldn't eat. His stomach was queasy. Every time he thought about Grandmaster Keno, he thought he was going to be sick. He just wanted to be left alone. But now they were telling him that he absolutely must have nourishment in order to heal, and if he couldn't eat, they were going to have to insert a feeding tube. Mom, Dad, can you please just check me out and take me home? Please. His father sighed. Gabe, your body is not healed enough yet. Your condition is still precarious. Please, just try to eat. Do this, if not for me, then for your mom or for Taylor. Please. Gabe sighed in defeat. Okay, I'll try. But I'm 18. It seems like I should be able to decide for myself if I can go home. You can, but I'm asking you to cooperate. Well, at least go get me something that's all natural. No stupid artificial butter and some clean protein. I'll take care of it, Keegan said and pulled out his phone. If I was still on pain meds, they wouldn't be trying to make me eat 'cause I'd be asleep, he muttered. If you were asleep, they'd probably insert the tube, Lizzie returned. Gabe frowned. Now, please, whatever your dad orders for you, just eat it. Or do I need to call your sisters? I'm sure Rose would have a few good words to say to you. Gabe knew his mother said that to get a smile out of him, but he didn't feel like smiling. He felt like screaming. Not very mature, he thought. He sighed. I'll eat. Lizzie smiled and patted his head. New scene, August 25th still, Sunday morning, Keno Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Good morning, my sweet babies, Shelley crooned as she came into the room. Bella and Breeze had pulled the top mattress from another bed and brought it into the room, and both ladies and 4 children were camped out together. Everyone looked up at Shelley. It looks like you all had a big party last night. The children were pretty quiet. Sighing, Shelley sat down on the floor. Do you remember who I am? You're my mother, Angelina said softly. That's right, sweet girl. So you can call me Mommy if you want to. Are you my mommy too? Noah asked. Oh, yes. I want Lucy, Manny said. Okay, sweetie, take my hand and we'll go find her. They all joined her while Bella and Bree straightened up the room. Shelley made a game of opening the doors to each bedroom until they finally found where Lucy spent the night. Lucy sat up in bed when her door opened. The children all ran to her and jumped into the bed with her. Of course, Shelley knew they'd be attached to her, which is why she'd asked her to continue on as their nanny. Shelley smiled at Luciana. Good morning. These children are surely going to miss you. If you can't come and be their nanny for a little while, do you think you could come to visit them a few times a week for a couple of weeks? Si, Senora, I can do that, but I have no transportation. I'll arrange for your transportation. Speak with your husband and let me know what 2 days you would be available, and I'll have someone pick you up. Yes, ma'am. So we need to get these babies cleaned up and dressed. Do they have more clothes with them? See, I brought as much of their things as I could grab from the daycare. You are a gem, Shelley said. We'll get them dressed. I hope you can stay for breakfast. See, I will help you with breakfast and then tell you as much about them as possible. And then I'm sorry, but I must get home because the FBI people are coming to speak with me. I understand. Breeze and Bella also helped to get the children ready for their day, and in no time, the children were sitting in improvised booster seats at the kitchen table. Shelley decided to make pancakes because usually no child could turn them down, and this time was no exception. Agents Ward and Trout, who had also stayed the night, certainly loved the breakfast too. They let Shelley know that they would be with her at all times. They'd been assigned to watch out for her and the children until further notice. Though the gesture on Jason's part was thoughtful, it brought on tears when Shelley realized the reason for it. It was because there was not a man in this home currently. Even though Jeffy and Cam were staying here, Cam had to work, and Jason knew Eric wouldn't want Shelley to be alone. It was painful coming home late last night and making her way through an empty house. And worse, into her empty bedroom. And still worse, into her empty bed. In the middle of breakfast, Ricky, Bree, and Taylor came in. The children were very happy to see Taylor again. Her beauty, combined with her bright personality and infectious laugh, made her a magnet for children. Everyone helped to clear their plates, and Taylor took the children downstairs to what used to be the grandchildren's playroom, but would now be used much more. Ricky, looking very tired, hugged Shelley. She looked up at him, hope in her eyes, and he shook his head. There's no change. Justin is with him. He'll let us know. Please, dear Lord, she prayed again silently for the umpteenth time today. Please heal him. Please bring him back to us. In Jesus' name. Mom, Bree said, I thought I'd help you make a list of things we'll need for the children. She motioned at the books piled in the kitchen chairs, like some booster seats for the table, and beds and strollers and toys and clothing and linens and food and all that stuff. And then we'll try to order most of it online if possible. Shelley nodded. Ricky, don't you need to go home and try to get some sleep? Yes, and I will. But right now, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to Dad's study for a bit. Oh, no, of course I don't mind. Ricky made his way in and closed the door. He went behind his father's desk and sat in his chair, and the wave of emotion hit him hard, and he had to work to get himself under control. Slowly, he pulled out the center drawer, neat and clean as always. There was an envelope with his name on it, not sealed. He picked it up and pulled out several pages of a handwritten letter, and slowly he opened it and started reading. New scene. Shelley recorded all the information Luciana could give her about the children, their current schedule, their favorite foods, their idiosyncrasies, their emotional and mental awareness, their likes and dislikes, their health problems. As it turned out, Luciana was starting to have concerns about Manny possibly having some learning disabilities, and she'd been terrified that Payne would find out and murder him too. Shelley thanked Luciana for her doing the right thing, for loving the children, for even knowing it would not only be dangerous, but she would be out of a job. She still came to find Eric. Shelley promised to help her with anything for the rest of her life, and she offered to start a trust for Luciana's 2 children, and then she hugged her and sent her home. Then Breeze and Bella announced that they had to get home to their own children, but that Mickey Davis and her 2 boys were coming over to take care of the children so that Shelley could get back to the hospital this afternoon. Shelley hugged her beautiful, sweet daughters-in-law and thanked them. They promised they'd be back the next day. Right after they left, Shelley received a text from Jason containing a recording of Eric's last words. Bree got the same text, as did Breeze and Bella, and Mickey, Justin, young Eric, Jojo, and Logan. Bree and Shelley listened to it together several times, and Shelley couldn't hold back the tears. Hearing his voice, hearing him trying to say goodbye, it was heart-wrenching, especially since he said goodbye to everyone but her. Pushing that aside, knowing he had his reasons, she looked at Bree. He saw his parents and Anne. I didn't know that. He's not coming back to me, is he? Now that I hear what Ricky heard, I understand why he seemed to have no hope. She shook her head and the tears fell again. New scene. At the hospital, Justin was doing the same thing, listening to Eric's last words and coming to an understanding. He didn't even try to stop the tears. He stood and went to the bedside. I just heard what you said, my friend, and I'm going to have to argue with you. I don't care if you saw Anne. You wave at her and you tell her you'll see her later. Right now, you have a whole lot more you have to do here on this earth. You have 4 children to raise. You have to take care of your wife. You have young grandchildren who need to know you. You have students around the world who are feeling like their prayers are being ignored. So I guess I need to take that one up with God. But Eric, you are not a quitter. You told us to rise up. Well, Eric, you rise up first. You. Haven't I always been there for you through everything? Well, I'm going to need you to be here for me this time. I'm not begging you. I'm ordering you to come back here and fill the gap with the rest of us. And yes, I'm angry, so you'd better buck up. New scene. Hoping to distract her mother, Bree sat at the kitchen table with her tablet and looked online for things they needed to buy for the children. They ordered most everything quickly because Shelley hated to shop. I'd like to have another prayer circle, Shelley said when the shopping was over. I'd like to do it once I get to the hospital this afternoon while I'm standing next to Eric. I wish we could get everyone together again, but since that's not possible, maybe we could do like a joint call or something. Bree nodded. We could do a giant Zoom meeting. I'll arrange it, and all you'll have to do is click on the link on your phone and we'll all be there. I'll make you and Ricky the conference leaders, and you can mute or unmute whoever you want. If you'll arrange that, I'd appreciate it so much. No matter how hopeless things are, I can't give up. I wish we could get the whole world to pray for him at the same time. Bree smiled. Well, maybe not the whole world, but we can get millions. I'll work on it. You be ready for the Zoom meeting. We'll schedule it at 3:30 this afternoon. Thank you, sweetie. Shelley then rose and announced she was going downstairs to play with and get to know her children. Bree immediately set up the Zoom meeting and then placed a call to 3 parties, John and Jody Apple, who would contact the churches and martial arts communities, Toby and Caroline Nash, who would contact the music and dance communities, and Isla August, who would contact her millions of followers, who would then contact other large influencers. She then gave them the link to the Zoom call and added, if people couldn't get on the call, then please take a minute to pray at exactly 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. Then she promised that Ricky Kino himself will lead everyone in prayer for his father. And finally, she contacted the corporate manager of Kino Martial Arts and put out word for every single studio to contact every single student and have them all pray for Grandmaster Kino at exactly 3:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Having taken care of that, Bree took a little time to go back and cancel a few orders that she and her mom had just made and change them to something more fanciful. For example, she changed the 4 youth beds to an elaborate princess bed surrounded by a castle with 3 prince warrior beds around it. The adorable setup would fit perfectly in the large blue room, which had always been blue, but soon Bree knew would change. It was the room right next to Eric's and Shelley's room. She changed a few more things before she glanced at the time and realized that Ricky had been in Eric's study for a few hours now. He'd been coming home from staying the night at the hospital and said he'd meet Bree and Taylor at the house, and he needed to get something from Eric's study. He was supposed to go home and get some sleep. Deciding to check on him, she rose and went down the hall to the study and quietly opened the door. Ricky lay sound asleep on the large tan leather sofa. Looking at him, knowing how he was suffering, her heart swelled with compassion and love. She came into the room and closed and locked the door and went to kneel beside him. This man, Ricky Kino, was revered by the world. He'd done over 80 movies, most of them blockbuster hits. He'd been picky about what movies he'd do, only those with morals and honor playing a major role. If the bad guys win in the end, he refused to do it. Not because bad guys don't sometimes win, which was evident in their lives presently, but because he didn't want it planted in people's minds to accept the bad guys winning. Most actors are intimidated by the studios and the threat that if they don't do certain roles, their career would be over. But not her man. Nothing intimidated him because he didn't care if people loved him or hated him. He didn't care if he never made another movie. His career was not what was important to him. He only wanted to serve God. His fresh, good looks, his gorgeous, muscular body, handsome face, thick, dark hair, beautiful lips, made the females of the world swoon. When he smiled at you, your heart melted. When he frowned at you, you felt real fear. He was an amazing person, and he was currently broken. There wasn't really anything more she could do to help the situation with Eric, but she could offer her husband some release. Kneeling beside him, she leaned over and kissed his cheek, and he only slightly stirred, and she kissed his lips softly, and when he responded, she deepened the kiss, and finally he moaned, and his hands came up and tangled in her hair. He pulled her away and looked into her eyes. Woman, don't start what you don't intend to finish. She smiled. Oh, but I do intend to finish. The door's locked, and I intend to take you to heaven. His eyes closed as his body responded to her words. He didn't say anything else, only pulled her back for a kiss that he hoped would never end. New scene. Keegan and Lizzie had decided to check into a hotel on Beverly Boulevard. That was just down the street from the hospital. Rather than driving all the way back to Keegan and Lizzie had decided to check into a hotel on Beverly Boulevard that was just down the street from the hospital, rather than driving all the way back to Crystal Cove to the Keno estate. Lizzie contacted Bree and asked her to get Keegan's and Gabe's luggage to bring the next time she came to the hospital. Currently, Lizzie was at the hotel, supposed to be resting, but she was uneasy. There was so much heartache right now, and it seemed no one was able to pull out of it, and that included her Gabriel. He'd eaten like he promised, and then he'd vomited like he promised. They'd given him some nausea meds, and it seemed to help. He nibbled on some crackers and kept them down. But Lizzie knew the feeding tube would be next, and her phone buzzed. Hey, honey. Elizabeth, I'm sorry to interrupt your rest, sweetheart, but you probably need to get back up here. What's happened? Well, the blood work they took earlier this morning came back, and Gabe has an infection. They just switched antibiotics, but he's definitely not feeling well. I thought you would want to know. I do, and I'm on my way. Lizzie dressed and hurried back to the hospital. Keegan moved away from the bed to allow Lizzie to get a look at her son. Gabe blinked up at her. Hey, sweetheart, she said, brushing his hair back. He didn't answer her. His eyes were glassy, his breathing shallow. Gabe, can you speak to me? I don't feel so good, Mom. Kelly came in with a new bag to add to his IV. Lizzie drilled her with questions and was horrified by the answers. He had a blood infection sweeping his body. He was now on 2 different antibiotics. A minute later, the doctor came in to examine him. He also checked his wounds. They didn't appear to be infected, but there was definitely an infection present in his bloodstream. Gabe looked up at his mother. Don't cry. I love you, Mom. Where's Dad? Right here, son, Keegan said, reaching out and taking Gabe's right hand. Gabe shifted his eyes over because he didn't feel he could move his head. I love you, Dad. We love you too, and you're going to be okay, Gabe. Don't give up. I'd like to see Taylor, please. I wish my sisters were here, and I need to see Taylor. Stop talking like that, Lizzie said. You just focus on getting well. Gabe closed his eyes. He'd prayed and asked God to take him instead of Grandmaster Keno. He didn't want to tell his parents that he thought maybe God had taken him up on his offer. He was a little bit scared, but he knew God was real, and he knew he'd see his family again one day. Taylor would be devastated, but she would be either way, and this way she'd have her grandfather's wisdom to get her through. He was really sleepy and allowed himself to drift off. Why is he not responding to the original antibiotics? Keegan asked Lizzie. She sighed. Antimicrobial resistance is a fairly common occurring thing, and there are strains of bacteria that have developed resistance, like MRSA, which is a staph infection and probably what is infecting Gabe, Lizzie answered. So, should we be worried? She nodded. Yeah, I'm worried. She choked back the emotion. I'm scared out of my mind, Keegan. An infection like this can and does kill. And once a staph infection gets into the bloodstream, it can cause septic shock. And she pulled out her phone and called Bree. Hey, Lizzie, how's Gabe? He's taken a turn for the worse. What? Oh, no. What's happened? He's developed an infection, and it's not responding to the antibiotics. They've changed up the meds, and we're waiting to see if he responds. I'm calling because he's asking for Taylor. I wonder if there's a way to get her up here to the hospital. Yes, of course. I'll bring her up right away. Thank you, Bree. Of course. And I'll add Gabe onto the giant prayer circle we're doing this afternoon. Again, thanks. Bree hung up and turned back to her husband, who was currently redressing. Did you hear? He nodded and sighed. I guess I shouldn't ask if anything else could go wrong. I'll go get Taylor. She and I will head up to the hospital. You want to come? Not yet. I'll stay with your mom until Mickey gets here. You know, Agent Ward and Agent Trout are here. Yeah, I know, but I want to see my new siblings again and spend a little time with them and with Shelley. I understand. See you about 3 then? He pulled her close and kissed her. See you at 3. New scene. Still August 25th, Sunday afternoon, Redwood Hills Medical Center, Los Angeles, California. Taylor gazed down at the boy she loved. He was pale. He now had a feeding tube inserted in his nose. The heart monitor bleeped out a steady rhythm. Gabe, she said softly. His eyes blinked open. Tay, he whispered. I just wanted to tell you I love you. I love you too, Gabe, she said. Please get well. And I will have to continue this later.